that. What I'm going to do now is I'm now going to pass it over to Robert Wingfield, who's going to talk about the Ordnance Survey data that they can provide. So just give me a second, Robert. You should now have control.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you very much, Ian. Yeah, I can see that. That's fantastic. And good morning, everyone. And great to be here with you. So I'm going to talk through a little bit about how OS data can support yourselves as housing associations. I'm also joined on with Gemma Jack, who's one of our pallet sales executives, and I'm more than happy to take any questions as well. So yeah, to introduce myself, I'm Robert Wingfield. I'm a senior geospatial consultant. I've been at OS for about 6 years, very much supporting across a wide variety of sectors, and really keen to showcase today how the OS National Geographic Database, our next generation of data and analytical data, can really look to support on some of these cases. So if we move forwards, there we go. Just thinking about how location data can really help us really understand the world. And this is really some sort of key principles, just really make clear about the value of geospatial and the value of OS data in supporting this. And that's very much around Ordnance Survey data being authoritative and trusted. You'll be using data that's created by ourselves at OS, but also through custodians, for example, local authorities, when it comes to address information, for example, utilising highly accurate, right down to centimetre level accuracy, and it's known for being reliable, but also known for being high quality because it's processed using really key data principles and standards, but then critically a golden thread of multiple sources of information together. So it's that interoperability of different data sets coming together to really support on use cases. And that could be something around identifying hard to heat homes. You need to understand address information, building height data, the wealth of attribution behind building information, as well as the context of that building to really understand and target appropriate mitigation measures around a home that might be hard to heat, for example. So that's where Ordnance Survey data and location data in particular can really come in really handy to support those use cases. And the way that kind of is very much moving forwards is through, if my slides move forwards, let's see. There we go, is all around transforming OS data for analysis, and it's really around understanding how Ordnance Survey data can be utilised to support your analytics rather than just having a map. Actually, what's the intelligence that's coming from that can inform your business decisions in a better way and a more efficient way. And the way that we are doing that is we are transforming our data for analysis through these four key things on the screen here. We're increasing our data update frequency, very much looking at increase that from monthly through to some of the data we now release up to daily, for example. It doesn't mean you have to take data daily, etc., but we are very much increasing that frequency, very much supporting that move forwards in that direction, as to ensure that you're getting the best insight from the data and really speeding up some of those workflows that we have to support your analysis. We're also providing richer attribution, and I'll come on to that a little bit in a moment about how you can utilise different parts of Ordnance Survey data to really support on your use cases. We're also looking very much forward to the future. The data that we've released in the last couple of years in particular support some of your key use cases, whether that's around understanding housing stock, understanding where, for example, you can put solar panels, for example, on homes. What's the data that's needed, the analytical data to understand that, to take that a step further. So it's moving away from just that cartographic sort of visual view of a map, but actually taking that a step further, be able to retain that map view and providing some analytics over the top of that map to then support decision making. And the final point on there is around more discoverable data. We're making it easier to link different data sets together, support what you're looking to do for those use cases. And ultimately, those four key points I mentioned on the screen there, as well as those principles I mentioned just a moment ago, transforming OS data for analysis moving forwards into the future. And that very much creates what we call the OS National Geographic Database, which is very much an evolution of our data. We released the OS NGD, OS National Geographic Database, about 3 years ago in 2022. And this is very much the authoritative data that describes the geography of Great Britain. So it's full national coverage, large scale, granular data describing the geography of Great Britain. And whilst it's very visual, as you can see on the screen here, and it is very much a route into these themes and collections of data, as you can see, but it's underpinned by a wealth of analytical attribution about every address, about every building, for example. And this is where you can really start to bring in the power of the data, bringing together other sources of data and from your own data sources as well, to really make this make some really good decisions from that. And to show an example of that, let's say you then took some address data, you've got the UPRN as that unique identifier linking addresses together, linking that to buildings information, understanding what UPRNs are contained within what buildings, understanding the attribution behind that building, understanding the height, understanding whether it's got a basement, understanding whether it's got a green roof or solar panels, for example, the roof aspect, whatever it might be, linking that to land use and the economic activity taking place on that area of land, the function of that area of land, understanding access points to that land use site as well, and then bringing together the land cover data, that's the green one on the left hand side, to understand the biological surface of the area of land. And already we're starting to link address, buildings, land use and land, understand that housing stock, understanding the context of what's going on, but then taking that a step further and understanding what's the proximity to a water course, looking at the water features and the water network, understanding the proximity to the transport network and how does the transport network relate to the address, linking identifiers, linking the unique property reference number to the unique street reference number, for example, and linking that together, and then bringing in things like structures, which are things like bridges, for example, and then other parts of the NGD like geographical names. So just a couple of moments there, I've started to link together and built a story around all these different data themes you can see on here. It's analytical data describing the geography of Great Britain. Then further to that is being able to analyse that from there, bringing in a cartographic view as well, being able to visualize it on a map, which is also always really important, but then bringing in other data sets as well to really enhance that interoperability and really solve some of those key business challenges that you have. So if we take that a step further then and go into a little bit of detail on that, if we then think about it from an address perspective, the way that we have built our NGD address product is that we've built that by life cycle. So you can understand the life cycle of an address, moving from a pre-build address, which those blue dots in the middle of the screen there in that construction site, right through to a built address, and then to a historic address as well. So it's split by a life cycle, making it much easier to understand where are those live addresses, being able to link that to buildings information and understanding that proximity of what's going on that surrounding area. And the fact that the address point is located within the building enables that easy cross-reference and that easy identification of your assets. So it's understanding and that sort of that view there. If you're wondering where this map is, by the way, because I get this question asked a lot, that's Pinhoe in Exeter. Lots of housing development going on there. It's a really interesting part of the country. But I should also point out in our address data, we also have street addresses as non-addressable objects. So non-addressable objects are things that you can't deliver post to, but still have a UPRN captured. So things like post boxes, telephone boxes, advertising boards, and sometimes ponds. Good luck sending post to a pond, might get a bit soggy. So you can really start to bring address data to life in that way. But then I think the value really comes in the NGD when linking this data to buildings and the wealth of building attribution that we now hold within the OSNGD. And this data really comes through on this slide here, and you can start to understand the wealth of data that we have been capturing. This includes, I'll just touch on a few of these: building age, construction material, and basement presence. So where the building contains an address, we have captured those attributes. And that brings a really good insight in understanding, okay, what about if you're trying to identify hard to heat homes? What you're trying to identify sort of the nature of your housing stock in that situation, understanding that site analysis, what's going on in the area, understanding correlations in your housing stock. Are there a number of properties with a basement? What information can you tell from that building age, for example? But also further to that, understanding the roof information, things like roof shape, roof aspect, roof material, which can give really good idea, and you can run some calculations on whether solar panels are present. Because if you know that your roof aspect is predominantly in a southerly direction, on your assets, then you know actually what's the potential there for solar panels. And we also have information on where a building does contain a solar panel already as well. So you can start to really pull together some of this data and start to create some understand some analysis on doing that solar panel suitability on housing stock, for example. We'd also link together address count, understanding the number of addresses contained within a building, understanding that wider contextual view and linking to site data, and understanding the height data and the number of floors contained within that building as well. So it's very much a wealth of attribution contained on the building, being able to cross-reference that and link it together to then embed within your analysis to then support on your decision making. And then I suppose taking that a step further now and kind of summarizing where we've got to there, that ability to link different data sets together is really important. You might want to do that in the context of something like flood risk, or there might be something else you're looking at in terms of correlation or understanding of linking different data sets together within the OSNGD, but also you might hold locally as well. And this kind of diagram here starts to showcase that in a bit more detail. We can go from the top left-hand corner in box number 1, where you've got a postcode area, and you then got those points of those addresses, but you're not really sure, you haven't got that intelligence of the building information or the land use sites data to understand what's going on beyond the UPRN and understanding whether that UPRN is contained within a flood risk or not, for example. But actually you can then take that a step further, understanding the life cycle of that address, of that UPRN, understanding whether it's a pre-built address, understanding whether it's residential, whether it's commercial, and looking at that in relation to that risk area that you might hold. Being able to understand and make decisions from that is really important in box 2 there. But going from box 2 to box 3, you can then take that a step further by doing that cross-reference, as I mentioned earlier, to the building and understanding the wealth of data that comes through on the building, understanding whether it has a basement, that's going to be of a higher risk, understanding, for example, whether it has a thatched roof, for example, and the intelligence you can then create from that, but also further to that, understanding the number of the height data, the number of floors and that attribution I just talked through to really build out a really strong analytical picture of your housing stock. And then in that box 4 in the bottom right hand corner there, understanding that land use site. And what I'm really talking about there is that function of the area of land and providing that geometry to state the area of land that we're talking about to really bring together and understand what about the land cover information, what are the other data sets you can start to put out to provide that wider contextual view around that particular building and around that particular address. So this just shows that how you can start to link just within the NGD in itself, then you can then broaden that wider and overlay onto a map view or embed into your database to really create some really good intelligence as to what's going on within your housing stock and to take that further. And then the final point I just wanted to mention is around our documentation platform. And it's all very well and fun talking about documentation, but there's a reason why. And that's because on our documentation platform, we have some wonderful story maps that you can access through the QR code and on the docs.os.uk URL at the top of the page there, because we have some great story maps on our More Than Maps part of our documentation, which goes through how you can use OSNGD data to support on things like understanding solar suitability on buildings, understanding risk, understanding access to green space, understanding how you can use OSNGD data to support in identifying hard to heat homes, for example. So we've got a wealth of tutorials and a wealth of articles to explore how OSNGD data can support your business requirements. So I will finish there and I'll hand back over to Ian, but happy to take any questions later on in the webinar. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Robert. That's really good. There's lots of really useful data sets that are going to help you, that are going to help organisations understand their assets better. So that's really good. Thank you for that overview. I did, and Robert touched on it as well. I did mean to say after Kate's presentation, but feel free to use the chat to ask questions for both presentations so far. And then, like I say, if we've got time at the end, we'll try and answer them. If not, we'll have to answer them through the feedback forms. But again, just to kind of summarise from a client point of view that we already work with. So Magenta knew that a property's age and construction materials are strong indicators of its energy performance. So older buildings, often with less insulation, are typically less energy efficient, more expensive to heat, and they use used the Ordnance Survey NGD data because it held all the information that Magenta needed. So ODC created a new data layer that easily identified the wall construction and the age of the building for all of the Magenta properties. And we also provided a detailed spreadsheet that listed all the properties with its specific construction material and age and provided it to them. And then this information allowed Magenta to identify hard to heat homes, which is something Robert touched on in his presentation, which is good, and proactively allows them to prioritise retrofitting projects. So by targeting improvements like new insulation or upgraded heating systems, they've been able to reduce carbon emissions, they've been able to lower energy bills for residents, and they've been able to comply with sustainability regulations as well. Okay. So now